Ryan, I know our assumption over here is that JT Tuimoloau and Jack Sawyer are going to be pretty good this year. Wondering how that assumption is going, how's it looking, and what have you seen from those two guys at camp?
Both guys have had very good camps. They really practiced hard last year. And, for a lot of these younger guys who really had their senior years affected by COVID, you can see how important getting in here and getting all these reps are in college. And they really put it in last year. I mean, last year they played. They would go down to the scout team. They were there. And they've kind of carried that over into this year. And now they're a year stronger, a year bigger, more experienced, understand what's going on. And been very impressed with both of those guys. And I think they're going to have great seasons.
How well do they complement each other? Their styles?
I mean, they're both very good defensive ends, and I think the key to that is when you're sliding a protection one way or another, you want to have complements on both sides because it's one thing to slide one way or chip one way, but when you have, really dominant players on both sides, then it's a challenge. And eventually, you're going to be in a one-on-one situation. If you're not in a one-on-one situation, that means there's probably only 2 or 3 guys in a route because there's extra guys helping. So it's just a numbers game, but it's great to have dominant players on the perimeter.
Right behind him, Spencer Holbrook, Letterman Rowe.
Ryan, when you look at this defense, I think 2 weeks ago Jim said that 25% of it was installed without grow exponentially. I know you've been asked this a few different times, but you're only 2 weeks away from the game now. Are you seeing exactly what you need to see to know that these guys are ready to go?
Well, yeah, I think so. They're playing with great confidence. They're playing with great energy. And I think what Jim's done a really good job of is, you have your whole offense or your whole defense, but then you figure out what areas fit the guys that you have. And, this is a different group than he had, the previous stop and in the previous years. So I think he's, recognized some things that, maybe he had a little bit differently at Oklahoma State than he has here, and he's tailored the scheme to that, which is great. It's a challenge on offense, and so I don't know what percentage he would have in. I think I would say most of it's probably in, but where do you spend the majority of your focus? And that's just like on offense. When we had JT, it was a lot different than Justin, and Justin a lot different than CJ and Dwayne. So that's the sign of a good college football coach.
You had talked about a couple others had talked about the quarterbacks and safeties being a little banged up. Do you feel like you're back to where you guys need to be right there? With 2 weeks into the game.
Yeah, I mean, we had a good practice today coming out of the weekend. So, the goal is to be at full force heading into next week's practice, and overall, feel good about it.
Fourth row middle, Patrick Murphy, 24/7 Sports. Ryan, you've made kind of your thoughts on the transfer portal and the policy you guys have pretty clear, but with kind of the situations with guys getting banged up and whatnot, do you guys discuss as a staff how to maybe reevaluate that, both in terms of going into the portal to get guys, but also keeping guys in the program that maybe could have helped you after they left after last season? Is that something you guys talk about regularly given the situation?
Every year you have 85 scholarships, and you have 110 guys in preseason camp, and you just make sure that the numbers are right. And so every year it's a balance to figure out, what that, mixture is of guys. How many guys, are kind of a starter level, backup level, and then usually some guys who are developmental. And then there's situations where, you need someone to step in and, fill a hole. Is typically the way that we've done it. When you look at Trey Sermon and Jonah Jackson and some of the guys that we've had, it was great to have Tanner come in because, we didn't really have a lot of depth at nickel. And so now he and Cam are there, and that's really good. So that's typically the way we've addressed it. And, we were, I think, at almost 90 guys going into the spring. So we were 5 over. And we knew that because you knew that, along the line there's going to be some attrition, and when you have some position battles that happens. And very pleased with the 85 that we have on, some really good young players and some really talented guys with experience.
Third row, right, Rob Olive, Columbus Dispatch.
Ryan, you've done this a long time, and there's a lot of changes on defense. What's it like going into that first game, being pretty confident of what you're gonna see, but not certain. I guess it's like practice range in golf, taking it to the course.
Yeah.
Is there similarity there?
Yeah. I mean, anytime you go into that first game, guys kind of tweak some things on both sides of the ball, and when you have different players, you want to utilize their talents, and again, that's the key to a good college football coach. You can't pick up anybody off of waivers or really draft anybody exactly the way you want. You got to recruit guys, and a lot of times you're recruiting the best players available within reason. I mean, you want guys that fit your scheme, but you're not just going to pass up on a great player. And I mean, when you go into that first game, there's going to be adjustments year in and year out based on your personnel. So there's a time where you have to have contingency plans in place for the first game.
Such a thing as a gamer too, a guy that's a okay practice player, but then the lights come on, and you don't know that until the game. And how long does it take to really know a guy is a guy?
Yeah. Well, we try to do that as much as we can in practice, and we try to simulate the games as much as possible. It's not that easy. We have a spring game where we have a crowd in there, and we're in the shoe. We've been in the stadium several times now, and you don't know, I guess, that you're in that game, but we try to do the best we can to simulate a game and get an idea of what's going on. But it is true. I mean, even when we go into the stadium for scrimmages, sometimes you see things that you're like, we haven't seen that in 5 practices, and then all of a sudden you see it. And then the more they do it, the more comfortable they are in that environment. So that's why we try to make practice as close as we can to the game, and even harder maybe sometimes.
Have you ever seen guys not play up to what you thought they'd be because the lights are so bright, or not?
What we say is, you're going to play in high pressure, high stressful environments to the level of your training, and if you think about some of the great players who are quote unquote clutch, some of those guys, when you look at their numbers in those clutch environments, they were actually average. They did average, and so all you have to do is trust your training in those moments. Now, there are some guys who overthink it and struggle, and get themselves all worked up, but that's part of the process of learning to play and growing up. And but there is a lot of pressure on everybody, and we talk about a lot that the pressure should be felt during the week. And if you put a lot of pressure on yourself Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, then you shouldn't feel the pressure on Saturday. It's like going into a test unprepared. If you don't know the information, you're going to be nervous and sweating in the back row. But if you know the stuff cold, then you walk in and you're not as nervous anymore. So we really try to stress that the middle of the week is where you should feel the most pressure.
Second row left, Stephen Means, Cleveland.com.
Ryan, when you get quarterbacks in here during the camps, and when you go watch them, or Corey goes watch them, what specific traits, if any, are you looking at? I know everybody's got their own thing, but
Yep.
are there certain things that you need to see in order to feel like they can play here?
Yeah. I mean, when you're evaluating quarterbacks, first off, there's the physical traits. So, your size, the movement, the accuracy, those types of things. Then there's the next kind of thing you're looking at is spatial intelligence, spatial awareness, in terms of the accuracy, understanding body language, being able to have some awareness and see different things. Some guys, we call them like carnival quarterbacks, they could go and throw the ball into a big tire 100 times in a row, but once those things start moving, they can't anticipate. So I think that spatial intelligence and awareness is really good, being able to read body language. Certainly leadership and the way that they carry themselves is very, very important. And then the ability to use mistakes as feedbacks, to learn, because you're going to fail. This game and quarterback play is you're constantly failing. But if you can learn from those mistakes and continue to grow and have that growth mindset, then that allows you the chance to keep building. When you look at the best quarterbacks who have played in this game and the guys who play in the NFL, they've all gone through those types of things, adversity. They've learned from mistakes. They've had setbacks in their career, and they grow from them and they get stronger. And so I think when you kind of look at somebody in a whole, there's all those pieces that come with it, and that's what we look for.
Because of how that position is set up, I mean, CJ's only going to be able to hit 15 times out of the year. So are there things that maybe you just don't know until you finally get them on the field? And are those things pretty consistent regardless of who the quarterback is?
Yeah, I mean, you can anticipate pretty good in practice and start to see things and patterns and trends, but until you're in the fire with somebody, you really don't quite know.
Front row right, Austin Ward.
From wherever.
Parts unknown.
Well, you did that.
Ryan, do you have any concern level with those cornerbacks specifically about their availability for next week at this point? We know Cam's just been on a pitch count. Denzel banged up a little bit, and then Jordan I know those aren't long-term, but how concerned are you about that position?
No, I mean, I feel like, we're going to be at full strength going into that first game. The majority of those guys had really good springs, and they did miss a couple guys missed a couple things here, but that's kind of training camp. And the goal is to have, everybody there at full strength going into really next week. So we have a full week of practice starting next Monday. But this week's going to be a good one, too. I mean, we're, decent shape.
You had that jump up and get you a corner specifically for Minnesota last year. If J.K. or Jair have to jump in there, how have their camps been? Because I assume they've been getting maybe more workload than you anticipated.
They have. I think both of those guys have practiced their tail off. And, they're going every day up against, Marvin Jackson and Mecca and Julian. And so I give them a lot of credit. I mean, they're out there every day. They've gotten better, both of those guys. And sometimes it's hard for them to see that, but they are. They've gotten much better. And again, it goes back to what you see in practice, what you're going to see in a game. And if they just keep grinding on these days, then they're going to find themselves in games really fast. And, you try to figure out who's game ready right now, and they're getting real close.
The camp portion of this month is over. Like, what is this specific week like?
Yep.
What's the goal here?
Notre Dame is next week, and then that's where the focus goes. But this week, same thing. Trying to classes start tomorrow for us, so getting into the rhythm of that and coming in the afternoons. But start to introduce some of the Notre Dame stuff, but stay locked in on fundamentals and discipline, and still do some good on good.
Third row left, Bill Landis, Rivals.
Ryan, I know you guys here have the luxury of being able to play a lot of guys if you want to, just because of the way you recruit and talent you have in hand. But I'm thinking of the beginning of last year when you were just playing so many guys on defense. Was there anything learned in those two games, in lines of you're playing a quality opponent week one, let's find our 11 to 15 guys and put them on the field and not worry about running guys out there like you were last year?
Well, I think now we have a better feel for who guys are and where they are in their careers, and they have experience. And going into last year, because of the whole COVID thing, certainly all the linebackers were green, and same thing with a couple of the safeties. And I mean, up front, it was a really an experienced group. This year, a little bit different. So I think we have a better feel for where everybody's at, and guys will start to build some roles. But I do think that you still have to ask yourself, is this person game ready for this first game? Are we going to trust him to put him in the game? If the answer is yes, then we'll still have some guys play multiple guys play the position. But I think to your point, it won't nearly be as much as last year.
Does a new defense complicate that at all, in the sense that if there are two backers and there are three safeties who really have it down, and maybe the group behind them is close but not quite there yet, but this is new, let's put the guys out there who know the new thing best?
Yes. But I also think that there are multiple personnel groupings, and it allows guys to grab onto some roles more than we've had in the past.
Right behind him, Jacob Bench, the Lantern.
Hey, Ryan, just going back to talking about quarterbacks and stuff, talking before Dennis and C.J. Stroud last week, they talked about their relationship with each other. Just from what you see with them, how does Corey and C.J. work together in year two for C.J. being the starter? Just how do you evaluate that?
Yeah, no, I think they have a great relationship, have since recruiting, and I think that CJ's really grown in terms of his leadership this year, and just has a much more wide perspective on everything that's going on, not just his job. He sees it almost as a coach right now, and so that's important. I know his number one thing is he wants to win, and everything else is secondary, and he's practiced that way.
Maybe a little bit away from the field a little bit. Last week, Big Ten reached a new media deal and whatnot. Just, what were your thoughts on that with the new media partners? What kind of does it mean for the Big Ten, just in your eyes?
I think it's exciting, and I think that everybody involved has done an unbelievable job, and I certainly just focus on the team and in the middle of preseason camp, not really talking much about that. But Gene called me up right away, and was obviously very excited about some of the things that are coming down the road for us, and so it has been a very exciting month for the Big Ten.
Front row middle, Dave Biddle, 24/7 Sports.
Hi, Ryan. You mentioned scholarships earlier. I think you indicated you might be at 85. I could be wrong. By my count, you guys are 2 under without Parker Lewis and 1 under with him. Is that maybe did a walk-on get bumped up to scholarship like a Xavier Johnson, or is my count just wrong?
No, we're at 85. Yeah, I'd have to go back and look to see exactly who that is, but yeah, we are at 85.
Did a walk-on recently get bumped up?
It may have been a little bit further back than that, but yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Was it Xavier?
I can't say.
Oh, okay. Gotcha. And then what was Evan Pryor's role going to be? And do you need someone to fill that role, or is it now, because CJ kind of indicated when we asked him about it, really it's going to be just Travion and mine are going to have bigger roles, not that they weren't going to have big roles. Is that kind of how it's going to be, or do you need somebody to kind of step into that role that Evan was going to have?
Well, yeah, quite honestly, we've been very impressed with Dallan. I think Dallan Hayden has really come on. You know, he's been drinking through a fire hose this preseason camp, and he's had ups and downs, but I got to tell you, he's got a lot of talent, and he's our third running back right now, and he deserves it. He's played really hard. He's had his black stripe taken off, and so you know, if he continues to grow, then we're gonna trust putting him in the game. We had a couple. We had one day full where Chip came over and did some running back, and boy, he's natural, and he's doing a great job at linebacker as well. So he'll be a guy that we could use as rain insurance if we needed him to. But you know, just seeing him live and in color, I mean, he's a talented running back. So been very impressed with the way he's playing a linebacker as well. But you know, we can also use him in a dual role if needed. But right now, Dallan will be the third running back, and again, been very impressed with his camp. You know, for a freshman to step in like this, and you know, he's got to use this as an opportunity now that Evan's down.
Third row left, Dan Hope, 11 Warriors.
Ryan, I know Cam Babb's been in and out of practice with some injuries. Just what's his status right now?
Yeah, he's he had a setback, but not a setback that's going to cost him the whole year. So he's out for a little while, and we're hoping to get him back here in a couple weeks.
So do you have like a timeline of when you think possibly you can do that?
Yeah, again, hoping in a couple weeks that he gets back out in the field. But you know, his situation is very unique because of his background and his history. So you know, we're just going to trust the doctors on it and kind of see where that goes. But hoping to get him back on the field.
Basically, you have to be extra cautious because of his history.
I think so. Yeah, we're going to be smart.
Front row right, Joey Kaufman, Columbus Dispatch.
Ryan, wondering what you've seen this offseason from Tommy Eichenberg's development coming from that Rose Bowl and being voted the captain.
Yeah, I mean, about what you would hope for. You know, if you said, okay, here's what you'd like to see out of Tommy in the spring, in the preseason, and now heading into the year, about what you would expect. You know, leadership, toughness, productivity. You know, just kind of a quarterback on the field right now. You know, a guy that obviously gained a lot of experience last year and is playing at a pretty high level.
We're going to be kind of the quarterback field, that middle linebacker, and learning a new defense as well. Seems like he's handled that well. Why do you think that is?
I just think he's a very intelligent player. He's got you know, a lot of competitiveness and toughness, and he likes the you know, the X's and O's of the game, but just has a great feel. You know, some guys can just diagnose plays at a high level, and he can process high levels of information too. So when you combine all those things, then you have a really good player.
Right behind Joey, Nathan Baird, Cleveland.com.
CJ last week was talking about how much his anticipation and things like that have improved, and you were just talking about how he sees the field as a coach now. Just curious, how do you sort of push him now in this second year? And is that something we're kind of looking forward to, like how you could try to challenge him up to a higher level this offseason?
Well, I think it's just the daily grind and the daily push to get better and to figure out what, you know, he needs to improve on, what our offense needs to improve on, and every day is a work in progress, you know, up across the board. So it's just, you know, putting one foot in front of the other, and hopefully at the end of the entire preseason camp, he's gotten better and he's improved, you know. So there's not one area that we're saying, hey, you got to get better in this one area. It's just across the board, and the more you play, the better you are.
Is there something about him that it takes to those sort of challenges better, you know, holding himself accountable, or just wanting that sort of outside pressure to get him there?
I mean, he's just so highly competitive, and he's just driven. You know, he wants it really, really bad, and you know, he's in terms of that drive and that want to, and you combine that with his intelligence and his ability. You know, one of the more special young men I've been around in a long time.
Just to clarify on Chip Trainum, that's you're looking at that as more like an emergency situation, just have him in the back pocket.
You got it.
Second row left, Steve Hellwagon, 24/7 Sports.
Yeah, Coach, I had a question from a fan, wanted to know of the returning players, the guys who were with you last year to this point today, who are a couple guys who've just really come on and are going to be part of the plan this year that maybe didn't get to play last year or, you know, had a lesser role?
I think at the tight end position, I've just been very impressed with Cade Stover and Mitch Rossi. These are two guys that have put their time in here and have really had good camps, very productive camps. At tight end, you have to, do a lot of stuff. You got to block. You have to protect. You have to run routes. I mean, there's a lot that is asked of you, and I've been really impressed with those two guys in particular. Trying to think of another guy who's been around. Julian Fleming's had a very good camp. Had a really good summer. Been impressed with him. Who else? I'd say those two guys probably jump out a little bit on offense. On defense, I think you kind of know the guys. I think that we're hoping Teron Vincent can really take the next step. He's had a really good camp, and solidify some things inside for us. So he's been a bright spot for sure. I think most of the guys, Ronnie Hickman's. I mean, these guys played, so it's not like there's any surprise there. But he's had a very solid camp.
I don't want to give any of your freshmen a big head, but 2 weeks in, are there one or two of them who sitting here today are going to be on the field the first game?
I learned my lesson by saying that. My phone will be buzzing by the time I walk through that door if I pick out any freshman. So, no comment.
Hey, Coach. We're going to have a chance to talk with Coach Hartline later this week on receivers. That's obviously a room that gets a ton of attention and for good reason. Specific, though, to Coach Hartline, what is his greatest asset to you? What is the strongest thing he brings to your program?
No, it's funny you say it because I think every year it changes. I think when he first got thrust into the role of wide receiver coach, he took it on and ran with it. I think the first thing is he played here. He walked in these hallways. He wore the block O. He played in the shoe. He's done it. And so that gives him instant credibility here and can relate well with the players. But then he went on and played and had a good career in the NFL, which, again, gives him more credibility. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean he's going to make a good coach. And I think, making that transition from player to coach for some guys is easier than others. And he's really made that transition well. I've challenged him with, how can you really take the next step as a coach and look at it from a wider lens, understanding protections and the run game and how the protections match up with the route structures. And he's really taken and running. He's really embraced all of that. And so, his recruiting obviously speaks for itself, but I think, he's become a more complete coach and he's continuing to do that. And I'm hoping that, pays dividends for us this season.
And how about Kyle McCord's development? I mean, he's not going to get a chance to see a ton of snaps. It's most likely this year. How comfortable and confident are you with his growth and his ability to, at any point, get in there and not skip a beat offensively?
Yeah, he's made strides. He's done some really good things, and we need him to continue to do those things. We need to keep growing and keep building because it's one thing, do it in practice, another thing to do it in a game. And so I talked to him the other day, it's hard to be the guy, who's one snap away. Sometimes you feel like you literally are one snap away, but you feel like you're not going to see the field for another year. And you can't have that you can't have that approach. You have to look at it like I'm going to be in the second play of the Notre Dame game. So, I think that's the biggest challenge for someone like Kyle, but he's made some improvements. He was really close to being a champion in the last scrimmage. So he's got to keep building and keep grinding, and he knows the areas that he has to improve on. But he's one snap away.
Deep center field, Clay Hall, WSYX.
Ryan, do you feel like you have a handle on Notre Dame maybe defensively because of Marcus, what he did at UC and Notre Dame?
When every year it's a different story, different journey, and that's a new defensive staff there, so they'll have different backgrounds that they're going to bring to the table, and all very, very good coaches. I worked for Al Golden at Temple and know him, and certainly have a tremendous amount of respect for him. And Marcus has obviously great history of being a defense coordinator, and so there's a lot of good minds in that room, and they'll be well coached and have a really good scheme.
I talked to Laurinaitis up at Notre Dame. I was just curious if, and maybe it's a matter of timing or personal preference, did he ever discuss an opportunity here?
Yeah, we talked about it, and James certainly has an unbelievable football background and got an unbelievable amount of respect for him, not only for what he did here at Ohio State, but his NFL career. And he's another tremendous coach, on their staff, and so again, it's going to be a challenge, but yeah, a ton of respect for him.
Thank you, Jerry. Speaking of carnival quarterbacks, did you win Nina a lot of dolls and stuff?
No, not so much.
I just like that term. CJ the other day was talking about the meetings he has with you and stuff, and I'm just wondering, it's rare that you've had a second-year starting quarterback.
Right.
Can you discuss or talk about those meetings, what level you're on with him from the standpoint of what kind of joy that even brings for you to be talking more and more big-time football, if you follow
Yeah,
the drift?
well, I think we used to say, you have to equate the room where, you have, in that room, you have Devin, you have Kyle, and then you have CJ, and they're all 3 different years and 3 different levels of understanding of the offense. And so it's good to be all in there together sometimes, but then sometimes it's just good to pull CJ out because he's very intelligent and kind of, figure out, how to, keep growing with him and teach at his level while you don't leave the other guys behind. And so, yeah, it's been good. He can handle a lot of information, but doesn't necessarily mean you need to be really complicated either, but he sees it well, he understands it, he has really good suggestions, he has a good thought process, getting to the point where, I'll go into a drive and ask him what he thinks. Not that we're always going to do that, but it's always good to hear what he's thinking, and we have a lot of good back and forth. I mean, we were in a scrimmage that day, it was in the red zone, and he came over to me and suggested a play, we did it and scored. And I think that's when you're starting to feel like that. And I think that's a part of play calling and being on the same page with the quarterback, because when you're in those meetings and you're talking about these things, when that play is called, you know exactly why it's been called because we've talked about it in meetings, and so you're on the same page. And I think that's hopefully pays off again this year.
And one other quickie, the fact that Notre Dame went against Jim Knowles' defense, the 4-2-5 in the bowl game, even though he wasn't there, it was still pretty much a similar defense.
Yep.
Has that given y'all a little bit of an advantage, you think, from a preparation standpoint, to see how they sort of tried to attack it, or they're, just what's your account, what's your take on that?
I don't know. I mean, they were on offense, and Oklahoma State was on defense, so I don't know if it gives an advantage to one side or the other. But yeah, I mean, it's unique that you'd end with the bowl game against those two sides, and then here we are, the first game. But I don't know exactly what that means, but certainly there's a lot of film to watch. Yep.
Just a couple more. Front row middle, Bill Rabinowitz, Columbus Dispatch.
Brian, it doesn't seem like there are a lot of position battles left. I mean, tell me if there are. Did you come out of camp getting accomplished what you needed to? What questions do you still have?
Yeah, I mean, the 3 things that we wanted to get done was toughness, discipline, and skill. I think we got tougher. We practiced really hard. I think sometimes to the point where the guys were looking at me a little sideways when we kept bringing out the ones during a couple of those scrimmages, but their attitudes were excellent, and they just kept coming. And so I think we checked that box. I think we got tougher this preseason, and it was well done by everybody. Discipline of sleeping, discipline of recovery, discipline of learning your plays and understanding assignments and those type of things. I think we checked that box. And the last one was skill. Do we get better at what we do? And I think we did that as well. So, I mean, those are the 3 areas in those first 17 practices that we wanted to get done. And so we're not going to stop with those this week, but, I think we've made some progress in those areas. And like you said, guys have kind of, established themselves, which is good to see. Because like we talked about last year, we didn't really have that. You had a bunch of guys playing, but you didn't really know what you had. I think we have a better idea what we have going into this first game this year.
And you mentioned Kyle Mccord. It's safe to say he is your backup?
Yeah, we haven't really talked about all that. We're still kind of in camp and working through that. But I think he's had a very good camp, and he's got to be ready to play in that first game. I mean, he's got to have that approach, and we'll talk more about that probably later in the week with those guys.
Ryan, when you were talking about Brian Hartline and the bigger picture stuff, what kind of responsibility does a head coach have to develop their assistant coaches, not only for how it helps your program, but for how it will help their careers down the line, even if that means at some point leaving a place like Ohio State?
No, I think it's a good point. I think that's important. I do. I think that's part of, in this profession, you want to have an impact on people. And I think about the coaches that I worked for and played for, they did that for me. So I think it's important in that.
You've talked about, I think, during the course of camp, just needing to be able to run the ball when the defense knows you're going to run the ball. Just the progression of that. When you have a 3rd and 1 against Notre Dame, where are you in where you think you need to be in being able to pick up that 3rd and 1?
Yeah, I mean, we've made good progress. I like where our line is. I like where our tight ends are. I like where the running backs are at, and that's going to be important. Yeah, for sure. But I think that we've worked at it, and the proof will be in the pudding when we play on September 3rd.
When you were talking about CJ's growing knowledge and all of this, philosophically, do you have an idea of how much you would be willing to sort of give a quarterback in a game of like, hey, sort of maybe take this and run a little bit and not call all the plays, but have more responsibility, not just checks, but maybe like what, do you have an idea of that? Do you want to not put too much on a college quarterback? And where are you with CJ in that progress?
No, it's probably an hour conversation, but I think that's, I know you got time, I don't. But I think that there are times where you try to figure that out in preseason, where you put a bunch on them, and then all of a sudden looks at you, it kind of gives you one of those looks, and all of a sudden you just take it all back, and you just. But I think that's the fun part of having a second-year quarterback and a third guy in your third year in your program, and it's fun because he can handle a lot of information. But then sometimes you just got to go play the game. We can't make it overcomplicated. But he can take a lot on. He can, but I think that's the balance as a quarterback coach and a coordinator is, when is too much, when he's starting to worry about all those things where he can't just play the game, because even the most basic play, if you're not thinking about much, you're going to see that play a lot cleaner than if you're worried about changing the play, changing the protection, all those types of things. Now you can get your eyes on the coverage and some of the things that maybe, situation in the game, what's the down and distance, how much time on the clock. I mean, what is the defense coordinator thinking as opposed to I got to make this check or I got to make this, change in the protection. So, a lot of those things come into play, and finding that right balance of what gives us a competitive advantage and what allows them to play fast and clear is important and something that we keep a close eye on.